The Titanomachy. Final Act. The world is changing. The balance is undone. For the king of the universe, Chronos, is a tyrant. He rules from Mount Othrys, his court made up of some of the first and most powerful beings to ever exist, the Titans. Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Pallas, Perses, Aegeon, Atlas, and more. They are violent and cruel, unjust rulers in an unjust time. And from their evil acts, a rebellion was caused. For the sons and daughters of the king were consumed by him, to prevent their power overmatching and usurping his own. Yet, ever does one often rush to the fate desperately attempted to be avoided. And when his own wife, Rhea, hid his last child and gave birth to him alone, the boy, Zeus, grew and matured in secret. Then, when ready, Zeus tricked his own father into taking a potion that forced Chronos to vomit up his consumed offspring. Thus were Demeter, Hestia, Hera and the brothers, Poseidon and Hades, released from their captivity in the king's belly. Fully formed, they sprang from his maw, carried to safety by the wiles and quick thinking of their youngest brother, Zeus. Then the sons waged a long war against their father and his court. Striking from the shadows over years, they built their numbers, then finally raised their banners on Mount Olympus. Thus are the rebels called the Olympians. Victory has been tasted by both sides. The Olympians were crushed until they gained the assistance of their sisters, who for long years hid amongst the court of the Ocean King and Queen, Oceanus and Tethys, bringing fresh forces and power, and together the Olympians dealt the king a mighty blow. For Zeus slew Iapetus, the very general of Chronos. Yet the replacement, Iapetus' own son, Atlas, has proven ever more able than his sire. And Atlas tricked and then smashed the armies of the Olympians, again in open combat. The king has remained aloof, but for once. Since that last engagement, the two sides have fought skirmishes, harried one another, but no decisive engagements have occurred. Now, the decade-long confrontation enters its final year, and the board is set for the final battles of this, the first and most brutal of all wars. The Titanomachy. The end nears.
Zeus.
We entered the 10th year. I have been fighting this war for 10 long years. In the early times, every day was activity, a game of cat and mouse, running rings around Iapetus, eroding the assets, holdings, and the mythos of the Tyrant. I will not call him a king. He does not deserve that appellation, that honor, for he is entirely without 1 ounce of it. Nor are his warriors any better. My last full-scale clash was a year or more ago now. Atlas bested me, near slew my brother Hades, crippled Nike, who is victory, and Kratos, who is strength. But more than this. They took the heads of nearly a third of our number, our minor gods, spirits, nymphs and oceanids. Holding the field, they permitted the beasts of Chronos to sup on the dying. Placed their heads on pikes in a palisade around the base of my home, spikes with loved ones affixed there, looking up at us. Atlas and his men thought this amusing, trying to force us to come down when they wished. But we did not take the bait, no matter how much we all wished to charge down on them like a tidal wave and wash their offal from our slopes. We resisted, but we did not forgive. And then, when I returned from a moment of reflection, I led my brothers in the old ways again. We struck out from Olympus in the black of night, and brought terror unto those who guarded the plains of Thessaly. And over the last year, we have culled their numbers near as bitterly as they had culled our own, for they wanted our people to flee from our cause. Yet, their callousness had only brought out a raging fire in all of us, and when we caught their forces in less numbers than our own, we took out our revenge with fury. For even with the support of our sisters, the forces they brought to our cause, the losses of that last battle were catastrophic. Yet, after so many acts of attrition, day by day, week by week, month by month, chipping away at their lesser soldiery, we have brought them down to the level where all might be risked again on another throw of the dice. Yet, when we met the Titans themselves, when they descended from the clouds with fire and wrath, still, despite how much we had grown, we had to withdraw, for their arms are greater than our own. Their weapons slice through ours. Theirs puncture our makeshift armor, while the Titans are mostly proof from our blades. In power, my brothers Hades and Poseidon have grown, as have I. We could match any of them now, if not for their panoply of war. I slew Iapetus, aye, but that was more fated than any skill on my side. And as I look to our next battle, I know what I must do. They are indeed powerful, but the difference is less than ever. Yet, I have come to know how I should fight this war, and it will not be to the taste of my brothers. Despite being my equals in might, all look to me. When nobody is there to mark it, even Poseidon. Hence, I discuss my plans with Hera first, gaining her support, her counsel. And she will bring Hestia and Demeter. And so, when we discuss my plan, it is not refuted. Tomorrow, we march from the safety of Mount Olympus. Tomorrow, we face Atlas again. Or so we will make him believe. Hera.
I take to the skies, above it all, watching. I see my sisters take up their positions also, and we look down on the plains of Thessaly as the armies march out to do battle. Today will be a different conflict, a different battle. For I watch as there is no middle, no flanks. The armies may be arrayed this way, as will be the practice for many millennia. But today, we Olympians will throw the dice. I look down as the chariots of Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, Kratos, Via, all arrive, but none move to either flank. Styx and Thanatos hover over them as well. The entirety of the Olympian strength is held in the one battering ram, the one fist. And thus did the Titans look on in surprise. Then, with a scream of pure joy, they combined to match their foes. The Titan heroes all move to the center, then charge. The flanks are no match for the center, as the armies of the king make haste to end the war. Atlas strikes the ground twice as he did before, and chasms appear on either side of the Olympian center, cutting them off. My brothers do not budge, do not advance. They wait for the onrush of the Titans. The Titans slay the lines of Quirites, decimate the Oceanids, brush aside the nymphs. And within minutes, they are on top of the Olympian heroes. Creus and Cous engage Styx, Hyperion, Thanatos. The five all becoming shadows and light, and flying hither and thither. Atlas, Aegean, Menoetius, Pallas, Perses, assail my brothers Via and Kratos. All move so swift that it is hard to make out. The Titans come on hard, and our forces seem to be only able to avoid them. Zeus ducks and flips away from the strikes of Menoetius and Atlas. Hades evades and dodges from the strikes of Pallas. Poseidon, those of Perses. And our army is forced back. Our flanks almost rout. They withdraw so quickly. The Titan wings on their heels. The majority of our people have run from the center. Only our gods are still fighting. And then it happens. I see the runners attempt to gain the attention of Atlas, but he has Zeus in his sights. They implore him for assistance. Yet he is mid-attack. None of the other Titans will give up on their quarry either. The runners come again, and again are ignored. And in all this time, I see the true battle won. For the Titan wings are drawn too fleet of foot, and they catch our retreating flanks. They moved too far. They are now within the very shadow of Mount Olympus. Alas, our men turn and witness the first assault, as boulders come crushing down behind and in the center of the Titan foot soldiers. They are being smashed, but cannot withdraw. The Gigantes will not allow them. Then, our own flanks turn and charge. Leading them are men of power, warriors of excellence and might, and the Titan wings are annihilated. For the men of valor were not lesser gods. In the center, the game is up, as Zeus fails to dodge a strike from Atlas, and his fists pass straight through the image of Zeus. It is all an illusion. The Titans howl with rage as they see not just Zeus, but all of the Olympians now fade and become wisps on the wind. They look to their flanks, now seeing the cost of their bellicose fixation on the sons of Chronos. For the beasts of the king have been hacked apart by the gods of Olympus. The lines of Titan Oceanids and nymphs, smashed by Quirites led by Zeus, and Satyroi led by Poseidon. Their army is all but gone. Only those beings directly behind them have survived. Knowing they have lost utterly, and that even their might is no match for the overwhelming numbers of the Olympians, they howl as one, and turn to flee towards Othrys with what remained of their army. It is as Zeus predicted. They had been desperate to take the heads of the heroes, and so they ignored the reality right before them. Zeus.
The celebrations behind me are raucous. Again, I sneak from the revels. I walk to the very edge of the mount, and I look out across the plains of Thessaly. There, his place of power, his Bastille. I take one bound forward, begin to drop. As I fall from the heights, I control my form. I shift to that of an eagle once more, and I take flight across the skies toward my father's home. The light touches my wings, but otherwise I am all but invisible. And who would be watching the stars tonight? All are either toasting their victory, or, I would wager, are drowning their sorrows. Yet, when I come toward my destination, I see him in the skies. He is waiting for me. The Lord of the Mount I now circle. My father, the King of the universe, Chronos. Alone he stands just above the pinnacle of his home. He looks out on the plains. Then, as I get closer, his head cranes up, and he stares directly at me. He whispers into the winds, and his words come to my ears. So, my son, you have won a great victory. Yet, you cannot sit on your laurels. Nay, I see your intent. To come to see what is next. What new challenge awaits you. So, behold my whelp, bred on a traitor. Behold what you now face, boy. And as I circled, I looked down on him. And from his feet crept lines of power that none but we two can see, and only because he wishes it so. My eyes widen as I see the lines creeping from one section of the mountain to another. Forms of sigils and glyphs, circles and wards, dripping from every outcrop, every flat, every peak. All the while that I have been facing his armies in the field, my father has been using the deepest magics, the oldest knowledge. He has been fortifying his place of power. Now that I see it in all its glory, barely fathoming the meaning of 1 in 100 wards, I know we are undone. For nothing that I have, nothing at my disposal, nothing I can gain, will ever be able to defeat those defenses. He is now all but immune. Just as we are on Olympus, through dint of the Gigantes and the enchantments of Gaia, the grandmother, our now much larger army. We cannot assail his home. He cannot effectively assail ours. And I give him a last look, as I hear his cackle of derision thunder across the skies. I head back to my home, desolate. There is nothing I can do, and nor can he. This deadlock will last all eternity. Our armies will grow and shrink as we march down to those cursed fields of Thessaly. And no matter the outcome of the battle, no matter who wins the clash, this war will never be over. I have no way to end it. I do not return home. I fly to that place I was born. I take refuge in the cave where I was raised. I shift from eagle to my immortal form, and I sit, cross-legged, staring into the hands of stone that held my own mother's when I was first brought into this world. And I speak. Grandmother, hear my call. You have set me an unenviable task, an unwinnable war. So, here, in this sacred place, I call upon you to tell me, why did you do this? You knew of the power of Chronos. You knew of his heart. You knew I could not deal him the death blow. So why did you set me upon this course? Why did you start this war? The ground rumbles. Flecks of dust shimmer down from the cave ceiling above me. And a face I have not seen in near a decade now forms from the moss and mud and water before me.
Zeus, my grandson, my life, my hero, why do you scold me so? Have I not defended your home, given you all that which you required to face the king of the universe?
You have been of great succor to me. Yet, grandmother, I cannot win. And you must have known this time would come. You must have known this question would be shot in your direction. So I speak it. What now?
Oh, my grandson, have you so little faith in your grandsire? Do you not think I too was waiting to see if you could reach this point, to see if the war would not change you to be naught but a copy of your father?
So, you knew this was a possibility?
Of course. When one battles a brute, it would have been so easy for you to give in to the fouler side of our nature. All of us have this potential, Zeus. For we are greater, more than others. And this can lead to a sickness of the mind and soul, the plague of thinking that the universe is here for you, when it is the opposite. As with all of us gods, we are here to create the universe, to form it, to speak its laws into existence, to guide and protect it. We are the creators and caretakers of this universe. We rule it, but we need not rule cruelly.
I have not succumbed to this sickness. I am who I always was.
You are Zeus, just more. Each day you have become more you, and this has been a blessing to watch.
So you accept this? That I am not my father's son, not my grandfather's grandson. I am not a third tyrant. But that fact does not tear down the walls of Mount Othrys. It does not allow me to meet my uncles and father on the field. They are too powerful, too well armed, their bastion impregnable.
So, you have forgotten much of what I have told you about the world, about its history, about your own family.
I was but a babe, grandmother. What holds your tongue now that I would understand better?
I cannot give you victory, my boy. You must earn it.
I nod. Then I think. I send myself back to those halcyon days when I did not even know of my father, my destiny, or this war. And I walk through my memories like waking dreams. I project images from my mind onto the walls around me, like the room of the ocean palace that Hera speaks of so often. I look on my past and concentrate on the memories from my first days and weeks. And there is Gaia telling me of the universe, of chaos, of the primordials, of her husband, and I have it. I look up and she is still here, a soft hint of a smile haunting the edges of her face as I respond. My uncles, who are not Titans. Once, you told me of the 100-handed ones, the mighty smiths, who are the one-eyed.
The Cyclopes and Titanomachy.
Can they help me, grandmother? Can they?
If anyone can, it would be they. But you will need to go into Tartarus to get them.
Well, as it stands now, I have yet to meet my grand-uncle. Now would seem as good a time as any.
Do not take this lightly, Zeus. My brother is ancient and angry, and the guard Chronos placed on the doors of his realm is a thing of danger, even unto your kind.
A Jakina. Yes, I remember it all now. I shall make ready.
With their assistance, you may yet win this war.
Aye, if I can just defeat a dragon and persuade the pit itself to give up its only residence.
Or you could just hide for all eternity.
You know I cannot. Not with a tyrant on the throne.
Then go with my blessing. When you are ready, call to me, and I shall open my depths for you and your company.
I nod. Then I speed on my way home to discuss this all with my siblings. For if I am going to Tartarus, I am not doing it alone. Demeter.
Never before have I witnessed, felt, experienced such cold. Yet, within this cold is a burning as well. We near the gates. It has been a long sojourn, so my siblings outlined what was to come. I had no real understanding. The grandmother Gaia opened a deep chasm before us. Her soil and rock she turned to stairs, and we walked down them, forever circling down, forever down, into the very depths of the earth itself. Darkness was rife, only held at bay by the glow of our mighty souls. Hades could scarce be seen. He would range before us, finding the way, reporting back at times. And now he appears before us all, myself, Hera, Hestia, golden Zeus, and tempestuous Poseidon. We creep like thieves through expansive halls and dank tunnels, some created by the power of Pontus. Some seem scoured by claws, or melted by lava. Hades says not a word, but gesticulates behind himself. To our destination. He has found it, the guard of Tartarus. We creep up the stairs again and come out on another level. Then he guides us to where we can espy it from above. A huge opening that rises into the upper regions of Grandmother, but confined. We look down on our quarry. It is easily a plethoran in length, 100 feet or more. Its wings as wide as it is long, with the upper body of a woman, but its metallic lower body shines. The scales do not look like those of the beasts of Chronos. They look as tough as bronze, shimmer like copper covering serpentine tails. The space between woman and serpent is covered with bestial heads, littering its upper body and back, lions, bears, boars, and all manner of predators. And above its head hung a deadly tail unlike the rest, with a bulging scorpion stinger. The flames that skirt its dwelling are bright, and it lays on a huge carpet of slowly burning embers. It is the guardian of the gates to Tartarus. It is a dragoness, a dracaena. It is Kempe. We all retreat from the lip of the drop, then look to one another. We think words to each other, not wishing any sound to rouse it. Hera speaks first. So, I am hoping you are all filled with bright ideas.
I have seen it nearer. Its teeth are as tall as we. Then we shall make sure our first strike is the only one we require. Demeter, can you call upon plant and vine? Can you impede it even slightly?
I nod and say, I shall try, brother. Zeus continues.
Hestia, Hera, you will strike at its wings and heads, not the bones, for they will be too robust. The sinew between. It cannot be allowed to take off. Hades, get close. Poseidon and I shall wake the beast and grab its attention. Dark brother of shadow, it is up to you to finish what we start.
Hades nods, and without a second of delay, they all turn and walk toward their positions. I stand here, stunned at first, but I know my role. It will not know I am here, not up here, but if my brothers fail, then my sisters. It shall sweep up, and all that it will see is me. The others have such determination. I must match them if we are to be equals, and I, Demeter, is second to none. I stretch out with my aspect. I feel the acorns and lesser plants beneath the burning embers on which it sits. I hear the cries of those near the heat. I wake the sleeping seeds beneath them, and I implore them to do just two things. The first is to grow, and the second to move around and over the slumbering beast. And with all of my soul, I awake the deep realms. They shoot up and burst from the embers, surround and cover the great beast as it breathes. Then it happens. The eyes of the dragon burst open, fire erupts from its mouth as its multiple heads thrash, to be free of the vines and flora over its entire form, trapping its limbs and tails tight. Its wings cannot beat, but they try, breaking more and more branches and vines as it wakes. My sisters send cutting winds and bursting flames up to tatter and scrape its wings, the howling heads caught in their fires. But by doing this, they free it more. It looks down in anger, and flames burst from its mouth. Poseidon and Zeus barely roll out of its corridor of sheet lava. But both now charge it, screaming and beating spear on shield. The ringing clamour is amplified in the cone we are in, and the dragon is not accustomed to such a ruckus. It flares its scorpion stinger out at Poseidon. He barely leaps under the strike, but must duck and dive thrice more as the stinger lashes out at him. All until Zeus hurls a boulder at its head. Distracted, the dragoness now spits more fire at Zeus. But with all this going on, Hades has snuck in. He carries the only blade of worth, gifted for this quest by Chronos. The short sword is sharp and durable. Hades slips between its tails and strikes into its stomach and leaps upward. His sword unzips the dragon from belly to skull, and its innards flop out like a broken dam. The dragon bursts flames from its mouth as all of its animal heads bellow out in unison. It screams and dies. And all below must run and roll to escape its body crushing them. But it is done. The dragoness is dead. Now all we need is to cross the last chasm. Cross this last bridge. Then we will be there. Zeus leads the way again. He and Hades trade dark satirical jokes as they walk over the last hurdle. Levity in this darkness seems inappropriate, yet it is a boon, for it lightens the mood. Zeus's confidence is infectious, if nothing else. I now understand what Hera sees in him. She is no calf-eyed swooner, but her eyes betray how she dotes on him. And with a laugh on our lips, we walk unbidden into Tartarus itself. The mists hide that which is around us, and I am glad of it. For I feel like we are not being watched, but being observed as a hungry beast does its newest repast. Hades makes not a sound as he moves, Hera nor Hestia either. Poseidon stamps his feet as if he needs to hear them resound. Zeus walks on with purpose. Then, to the shock of us all, he calls out,
"Sons of Gaia, hear our call. Sons of Gaia, Arges, Brontes, Steropes, those called the Cyclopes, hear our call. Sons of Gaia, Briareus, Cottus, Gyges, those called Hecatonacaries, hear our call. We are your saviors. We are here to show you the way out. We come to guide you to this surface once more."
His words echoed long and far, coming back to us many times. Yet amongst these echoes, we heard the sound of movement, felt the very ground beneath us shudder and sigh. And out of the gloom they came, one at a time, but each stood silent until all three one-eyed giants were present. The Cyclopes, huge yet sullen. Despite their size, they were demure and almost skittish. And before me, Zeus and Hera conversed with them. They explained who we were. They explained who we fought. They explained that their intent was to help them. And that was that. The Cyclopes all just nodded and waited. I never know if they were so calm due to boredom, due to simply not believing what was told them, or if they were just placating us. thinking we would never truly escape this place. The Titanomachy were not so easy. Bluster and threats, the solitude and darkness had seemingly driven them to fury. At their advent, we all had to scatter, to calm them with words while evading their strikes and projectiles. But eventually, even they were turned by their golden brother. He laughed at them, not in hate or derision, but as if it were a game. As if their attacks were good-spirited tests of speed or agility. Eventually, even they calmed and even chortled along at some of his more ribald darts. And as soon as they stopped charging, stopped fighting, Hera and Zeus spoke with them. Their eyes gave nothing away but their ambient rage. But when we all turned to go, they were in tow. And so we walked to the place we had entered. And the predictable occurred. For it was then that the aperture closed before us, and two burning fires sprang up where it had been. They acted like eyes as the realm itself spoke inside our souls.
You are thieves. Nay, we are traders. If that is so, then what payments do I receive for the loss of such guests? Ah, my granduncle, we have already made one down payment, a deposit. Many more shall follow, for it was I who sent Iapetus to your realm, courtesy of my envoy, Styx.
Zeus damned his eyes, then shot back without missing a beat.
Methinks that these beings have given you entertainment as much as they are able, and I would not want you to be in lack of entertainment. So, for these 6 sons of Gaia, I would offer you a king and all of his court. And if you are defeated, what of my payments then, young pup? This Titan will not be alone for long. I promise you that, grand uncle. Remember those words, young one, or there will be a price to pay.
The flames flickered even more intently, bursting into light. Then they winked out entirely, and before us a massive exit opened like the dragon's mouth, the walls of Tartarus just lifting up and allowing us to leave. And so we did. And with us, we had the Cyclopes and Titanomachy. We had the means to win this war. Zeus.
It was the change that was needed. For now, we did not just look at Mount Othrys. We planned. We could do it. But there was more to come. For the gift from the grandmother, from Gaia, the Cyclopes at least, are not just the power they wield themselves. And they were as old as the Titans, and just as mighty. For they knew the old ways, and depended on and gave respect to them. So, in the next days, the Cyclopes built a massive construct. It was like unto a table, but carved and inlaid with artifice so delicate it took away the breath to just gaze upon it. And they called it the Altar of the Constellations. And there I and we Olympians made common cause with the Cyclopes. We sealed a pact betwixt us, with libations and incenses and offerings to the forces of the universe. and our pact was sworn on the river Styx itself, making it unbreakable. The pattern by which so many holy pacts would be henceforth made between even the mortals who would come later and we Olympians ourselves. And from there, the Cyclopes became busy. They created a mighty forge with a fire so intense it could rival even that of Helios. And then they set to making. It was not long before we brothers were summoned, and before us all were their objects. The Cyclopes had made us weapons of surpassing worth, greater even than those forged for the Titans. And on the 3 plinths were 3 objects, one to each: a trident, a helm, and a bolt. Poseidon, of course, strode forward first. Thinking himself most warlike, he grasped the most obvious weapon, the trident. I nodded to Hades to proceed, and so Hades walked forward and stood before the helm. Later, we all admitted that we were drawn to that which we took. And so it was that I, Zeus, strode to the middle plinth and took up the strange bolt. But as my fingers stretched around its haft, it burst into light and activity, twisting and writhing in my hand, crackling like 1,000 roaring fires. There was a lightning bolt, the storms of the heavens made manifest. Many more were forged by the Cyclops, and they were mine, all of them. Hades donned his helm and winked from existence, or so it appeared. But he was not gone. He was merely under a spell so powerful that none could make him out. He was invisible. And the trident of Poseidon, a weapon it was, but so much more. Little was Poseidon to know this until he took up his own throne. But it was as he had yearned for. It was swift, perfectly balanced, indestructible, and could cut through near any substance. And with these weapons, we knew the mighty Cyclopes had already repaid we liberators. Yet the pact was made. They would come to the war as well. They were as hungry to be revenged on our father as we were, perhaps more so. For Chronos had left them to rot so very long ago, for nothing more than the crime of being ugly. They would march with us when we went to Mount Othrys.
Hades.
The days had been progressing, but now a crux point had been seen in the stars, and Prometheus himself had come to give alarm. For he went to Zeus and we Olympians and proclaimed that this was indeed our chance. In 3 days, the forces of Chronos would be informed that they could win. They would be given such news that they would sally forth without restraint. Of course, we asked how he knew this. If it was his aspect, his godhead, or something else. He would not say. But he looked to Hera and nodded slowly with great purpose. Hera looked unto Zeus, and they both nodded to the son of Iapetus. And from there, we prepared. For it was Zeus who spoke with me, asked me to do a thing that he could ask no other. And that is how I find myself hanging from the cliff face of Mount Othrys, the very night before our battle. We spoke, and I donned the helm of invisibility, and I walked the plains of Thessaly all the way to the home of our father, the king, Chronos. None could see me, yet I was cautious, for the helm granted me such power as to slip between all wards, and yet I knew not if any could hear me. And the Titans are mighty as we, so I factored for every sense. I then climbed into Othrys, up its sheer size, up to the very halls of my father and the Titans. I moved through them like a ghost, until I found the place I had been told to go. A spy worked for us, not them. But who was it? Of course, I compromised the fact that this might be just a long-game treachery from Prometheus. But his brother was under the watch of Poseidon. If I did not return, then Epimetheus would not see the dawn, and Prometheus would be hunted until his last breath. It is then that I hear the padding of delicate feet on the marble floors, and in walks one person I did not ever conceive it would be. The very counselor of the king, Metis. She looks around the room, back down the corridor she came, then directly to the one door I cannot access. She takes out the keys and unlocks the door. She then walks from the room. Over her shoulder she whispers,
"On your way out, you might want to go via this left corridor. Be vigilant, and perhaps you can serve more than one purpose this night."
I do not reveal myself. I wait until I can hear her leave the area entire. Then I pad to the door. It is, indeed, unlocked. Carefully I open it and walk inside, pulling the door to, but not closing it. I know not if it will lock behind me, you see. And there they are. The racks of dazzling burnished blades, polished and perfect armor, shields and spears made for war. I stand amidst the armory of the Titans, and I take out one of the weapons of my brother, for the Cyclopes confirmed that this one weapon would be up to the task. And few things in this universe can do what it did. For I take one of my brother's bolts of lightning, and I hurl it at the collected weaponry in the manner directed by the Cyclopes. And in the one night, in the one act, in the one raising and lowering of my arm, the stored artifacts of the Titans are gone. Only one is not here, the scythe, the sickle, depending on who you ask. But the weapon of our father is not present, that alone. And I have destroyed it all. The room contains the sounds, but I make haste nonetheless. She unlocked the door. She knew what would happen. I put my last ounce of trust into Metis. I creep down the corridors to my left, a longer route. I expect a welcoming committee at every junction, but none appears, for none is there. I slink through the night and then past a room, then stop and back up to look into it more carefully. And there she is, weeping in her desolation, chained to a boulder of a substance I do not recognize. And I know her. I go to her. Without a word or any action to alert her, I attempt to move the boulder. It is so heavy, it is beyond even me. But then I look to her manacles, and I take a chance. I slip off my helm, and I hear her sobbing stop. She can see my shadow on the floor. "Mother, hold up your hands." She gasps and looks up at me, and she smiles, and then holds up her hands. I take off my helm, and I smash it on the chains. And I was right. The workmanship of the Cyclopes bests any other, and my helm smashes off her manacles. She looks at her arms as they are finely bare of metal fetters. I then offer my hand to her, and she grasps it. She is tired, dishevelled, and bruised. No doubt, Chronos has visited her recently. So I bring her into my arms and lift her up. She does not fight this. She is so light. I then stalk as fast as I can to the nearest exit. I creep past near all, before finally, on the very edge of the mount, there are 3 guards who bar my way. I throw Rhea into the air, then whirl on my heels and slam my foot into the head of the first. He flies off the edge. I sweep the second one from the ground, grabbing his blade as he falls. I impale the last one and push him over the edge also. It is then that I take the seconds to transform into a mighty raven. I take to the skies and snag my mother as she falls, carrying her away from the home of the king. Behind me, the citadel awakes, and from the screaming and bellowing, they have discerned my handiwork. As I fly us back, Rhea, my mother, watches the plains of Thessaly in shock. She has been a captive for so long. She remembers these plains as mighty peaks and hills. She weeps, for many reasons. The desecration of the landscape, in the very face of Gaia, the horrors that must have occurred to do these injuries. And of course, she weeps for the joy of not just being freed, but being carried to salvation by one of her own sons. And I glow inside. I will never be the center of the play, the lord of the stars and skies. But at this moment, I, Hades, feel like a king. Metis.
The day had not even dawned, yet Chronos the king was in a foul mood. His fellow Titans stood beneath his throne. All matched the temper of their lord. They were enraged, and he addressed them.
So, the runts have come and burnt our baubles. So what of it? Atlas, do you fight with fist or weapon? Pallas Perses, do you not have skill enough to leave the crutches of superior weaponry? Monetius, do you need a mystic blade to carve your enemies to pieces?
The Titans roared their denials. All spat their anger out in their rebuttals. Chronos had them, and he was about to unleash them. He then turned to me in the corner of the room.
Now, Metis, before everyone, tell me of the omens. We all hanker for a reckoning. Report now!
And so, I told him what he wanted to hear.
A battle should happen this day, my lord. The chances of victory hang in the balance. But the portents show that he who goes with the more bile will win out, and in so doing, he who strikes with the fury of lightning will win the day, and in doing so, the war will end.
You hear that, my brothers? Today this ends. Today I shall lead you to victory.
And the eyes of Chronos shone. He looked to his heroes, his brother Titans, their sons, all Titans of war. He strode from the palace, with his Titans in tow. Weapons or no, the call went out, and as dawn rose over the plains, the Titans were already coming down from Mount Othrys. But this time, the king himself was in his chariot, and he was to lead from the very front. Chronos was riding to war. Zeus.
The forces of Chronos are loud and brash. All can see them charge down onto the fields of Thessaly. Even on Olympus, we can hear their clamour. The skies turn red as the dawn begins, and we Olympians are ready. For as the first light strikes our home, touches the tallest peaks of Mount Olympus, I, Zeus, bring down my sword. I sacrifice a white bull on the altar of constellations. I give its life to Helios, to Gaia, and even unto Uranus, the powers of the world. And with all watching on, the blessings were given to all who fought for we Olympians. Down came the armies of Olympus, and arrayed before the lines of the king of Othrys, Chronos. But none could espy we Olympians ourselves. As ever, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter would not fight directly. Even now, it was believed that the Titanesses would not fight, but not with certainty. So the pact was nominally continued, due to the desperation of the moment. Kratos, Via, Zelos, Nike, Thanatos, and Styx were in the wings of the army. The Titans broke into the three, yet it was Chronos who held the center, and he was at its head. Fire then burnt across the plains and hemmed the Titans in. For at each side of the plains their escape route, some force, my lightning, had made them sizzle and catch a flame. The heat haze added to the hell of the moment, for both armies eyed each other. The Olympian forces far more numerous, the Titans containing the strength of ages, the savagery of the despot and his accomplices. But this would be it, the end, the last confrontation in this war. It was no surprise to any that the Gigantes had come down from Mount Olympus, and it was they who began the battle. As scores of large rocks flew through the air toward the Titan lines, the king took his reins. No charioteer needed he, and he whipped his beasts into a charge. Chronos moved, and so did all of his army. He waved his sickle in the air, and the rocks of the Gigantes decayed and became harmless dust under his power. Chronos himself then moved forward so fast his chariot was a blur. He seemed to strike the lines in many places, his weapons carving through the Olympian ranks as he made for their heroes. His brothers followed at the heads of their armies, but then it was revealed. The Gigantes were not all that I had brought to the fray, and hundreds of huge boulders, some many times the size of a chariot, flew towards the Titans while Chronos was engaged, and they burst into flame as they rose into the air. Coming down amongst the pitifully small allies of the Ancient Ones, the few remaining beasts of Chronos were smashed to bloody burning pulps. The remaining Oceanids and nymphs were mostly annihilated by this avalanche-given wing. And from the skies, a chariot whipped by Prometheus and Nike, flying down toward the Titans. It was me, Zeus. In my hand I held power that crackled and sputtered. The Titans looked up at my advent, and it was then that I took my 2 bolts from my quiver. I threw one after the other in quick succession, and when they left my hand, they became as bolts of lightning. Menetius was struck first, then Aegeon, and both were lit up as their sinew burnt from their bones. Their eyes exploded, and their skin slewed off them as they dropped lifelessly to the ground. And as they did, the clap of thunder heard when Iapetus fell resounded twice more. I, Zeus, had slain 2 Titans outright. That panic erupted amongst them, which was expertly augmented by the advent of my 2 other brothers. For Poseidon also came out of nowhere, his chariot erupting from a river nearby. As he slammed into the lines of the enemy, he thrust out his trident again and again. An Oceanid and nymph, elemental or satyri, all perished before its touch. Poseidon then came to grips with Astraeus, the 2 a blur of strikes, parries and feigns, until finally the force of Poseidon was too much, and he impaled Astraeus, lifting him into the air as ichor burst from his mouth, and his sword clattered to the dust. And he too was slain, and the thunders resounded again. After a decade of war, the next moments were so quick, the succession of events so dazzling, that none would later believe it. For the dam had broken. For fate, the powers, turned their face from the father, and shone it on the son, who had given such sacrifices to appease them this very morn. Chronos took stock, mid-rampage into the Olympian lines. He launched himself into the skies to attack me. He flew, but also appeared and disappeared, as if he were everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. He came at me from all quarters again and again. But as he struck me from behind, all he found was a black blade coming up to stop him. I was not alone. Hades now defended my back whenever Chronos appeared. I threw bolt after bolt of lightning wherever the king manifested. But without Chronos, without their king and his power, the boulders of the Hecatonachries stuck harder into the last Titan warriors with each moment, and Poseidon pushed hard. Creus and Coeus fell to the burning missiles, not slain outright, but then crushed under the weight of how many were thrown at them. They were covered. Those who closed with the Olympians to avoid the hail of stone were met by Poseidon's sticks and her children, and Chronos saw that he could not match his 2 sons unawares. And he heard the clap of lightning and thunder again and again. Each bolt a shot at him he barely escaped. Each peal of thunder another defeated Titan. And, as the last of his adherents fell on the plains below, Chronos could feel not only his might, but his majesty drain away. Hyperion went down to a flurry of attacks from the newly arrived Cyclopes. They saw him through the battle, and all charged as the one. They beat him down with their clubs, then trampled Hyperion into the ground. And Chronos now saw his fate, and fled. The sight of the Lord of the Titans turning tail to Othrys was the last straw. The small forces kept together by Pallas and Perses were retreating up the slopes of Mount Othrys and saw Chronos go over their lines. Their disbelief slowed them, and this slew them. For the Olympian army did not stop on the plains. For the first time, we continued, and the Hecatonachries took ever more great boulders and segments of mountainside with their 100 hands. and they threw so many missiles at the mountain that its face was near destroyed, and all on its slopes were crushed. Pallas and Perses were not even given the honour of death in combat. Thanatos, Styx, Hades, and I then took to the skies and sailed over the places the Titans had fallen. Each pass brought out their animus, their ineffable souls. And Styx and Thanatos used arcane might to attach them to the train of my chariot. And the Titanomachy and Olympians and Cyclopes then combined our might, and we assailed all of the power of Othrys. But the fates had changed, and with this force, we Olympians tore down the protections and last remaining guardians on its highest slopes. His palace burning around him, Chronos stood before his own throne. He did not wince when the doors were blown off by an explosion of lightning. A score of nymphs and oceanids charged inside and circled him, but none ventured close. He was Chronos, and they were afeard of him. In silence, Hades, Poseidon, and I walked in. Hades had his helm pushed back, so he was visible, but could don it again with but a flick of his head. Poseidon strode in with his trident, striking out a theme as he walked, his rhythm the same as his paces. But I towered into the center. Blue crackles and worms of power creeping over my hair, my eyebrows, my newly growing beard, then flowing down my body and arms to the bolt I held in my hand. And the king spoke. "Not coming at me one at a time. Are none of you brave enough to face me alone?" But I responded before the others. "You forget your own history and all your self-aggrandizing propaganda. You are no hero. Did not your brothers hold down every limb of your father before you even revealed yourself to strike?" He glares at me and speaks again. "This is a cycle. Once I was the hero. I was the tyrant killer. This will not end with me, boy. It is the curse of the line. Look to your own offspring, for they shall be your undoing, and in time, you will be the one called a tyrant, and you will stand where I do now." And the king tried his last. He appeared from 100 angles, his sickle slashing and carving through the lesser beings, and as one, they all fell to the marble floor, destroyed. Only the king and we his sons remained. Chronos stood with his sickle dripping blood and ichor. We 3 Olympians fanned out. Each stepped carefully. None of us took our eyes from Chronos. He disappeared, bending time around himself and attempting to slay all 3 of us in one butchering cleave. But his power was not as it was, and he cursed his arrogance. For if he had done this at the beginning of the war, we would all lie dead. But not now. We had all learned too much, grown beyond him. Chronos moved and brought down his sickle. Hades was not there. He could not be seen. Poseidon was prepared and easily spun backward, parrying the bow. I rolled forward away from his swipe and even parried the next attack from my father, even while raising. The next seconds were as hours, as Chronos appeared again and again from different quarters, desperation leading him. And the years played their part. For Chronos, our father, had not taken the field, and we, his sons, had fought for a decade, and in this last fray, it counted. For despite his speed and power, Chronos could not touch us, any of us. Then, Hades materialized behind the king and wrestled him. Chronos and Hades teleported around the huge hall, but dark Hades would not let go. And I watched. In the last, I then broke my vigil and turned on the spot, and I threw a bolt as Chronos appeared, and Hades let go just before it struck. Lightning slammed into the king, and crawled up and down his body as he shook and screamed in pain. And while this all went on, I then grabbed my father's arm and twisted it, and Chronos fell to his knees, the bolt's power still coursing through him into the floor. But he was mighty. He was the king of the Titans. The bolt did not slay him outright. And I looked down into the eyes of Chronos and spoke. I am not my father's son. Your time, and that of the Titans, is over. We will build a better universe than you could ever conceive. Now, goodbye, Chronos. And with that, I, Zeus, used my bolt and slammed it into the head of the Tyrant, squelching through his flesh form and piercing his very soul. A blinding light burst through the throne room as waves of power flowed over we 3 Olympians. Chronos' eyes widened as I drove my bolt in further, and with a sickening crunch, the great surges of my force now dissipating into ripples as it flowed from him. I grasped at the essence of my father as his body disintegrated in my hands. Chronos was slain. His animus we attached to my chariot with all of the Titans who had fought. Then I and Hades did not tarry, for we immediately flew to the gaping hole left by Gaia, and we took them all to Tartarus, and I considered the debt repaid. The Cyclopes were more than happy to forge the bars for the Titans' new home, the mighty Titanomachy. I rewarded with a position of guarding their brothers and sisters, and they grinned at the chance to keep the Titans in the place that they had all endured for so long. And the realm, my uncle, Tartarus, was grateful for his new toys. All were now consigned to his dark clutches. All but one. Atlas had stood his ground, but had not fallen, and did not die. Yet, before Zeus and his brothers, Atlas knelt, defeated. Hera.
We look down on the burning rubble of Mount Othrys. My sisters and I descend to meet our brothers. They stand looking at each other, stunned. They have fought this war for so long. None are sure what happens next. None really believed this moment would come, let alone come so swiftly in the one day. They just gawk at each other, not knowing if they should laugh or should. We land before them and rush to break the tensions. We rush to embrace our brothers. And by the end of it, we are all in a circle, arms linked as we look at each other and burst into peals of laughter. Not hysteric or histrionic. We release the pressure we have known since our births. Each one ripped from our mother and then forced down the gullet of our father. All but one. But his life was no better than ours in many respects. And then the feeling creeps back in. The mood is lighter but is darkening. Now is my only chance. Now, brothers, while we all still feel the glow of familial bonds, you have much to discuss. Hades nods. Poseidon loses his smile and scowls. Zeus just beams at me and winks. I point to the throne room once more. You will go in there, and you will not come out until you know.
Know what, O Counselor?
You know well enough, Zeus. Do not play yet. There will be a time for that very soon, but this is not it. Go, discuss. Divide the skies, the seas, the moon and the stars. You must decide who is where and why. But you must all agree. Never again can we return to this moment. You decide how the universe will now operate. And they simply nodded and walked to the throne room once more. And Zeus entered last, closing the doors behind him. I could not help myself. I let my consciousness shift, and I was not alone as I listened on the winds. Poseidon begins. He sallies out that he is strongest, so he should lead. Hades rebuts.
Do not be ridiculous, brother. We all know who is to lead here. Let him have his say. To what end? As here stated, this will be the last time we speak of this. We decide it all, here and now. We can never be strong if we are split. We are brothers. Whoever rules will remember the rights and pride of the others. Whoever? You mean you? Have you forgotten everything, brother? Has your mind dimmed so much with the thrill of action that you have forgotten the years inside him? Have you forgotten how you got out of that little predicament? That line of thinking means we are beholden to Zeus forever. That is not what I want. I never have. That aside, you know who should rule. He has led us all throughout this war. You know that, Poseidon. You do.
We can hear the deep rumbling from the chest and throat of Poseidon. He is vexed, but he has no counter-argument. He knows this, really.
If this is fate, then so be it. I suggest we draw lots. If you are always to be our king, then your hand will be guided, yes? I will go one step further, brother. You and Hades can draw first. But let us decide now what we draw lots for, what it all means. The rule of the universe, of course, brothers. There are the heavens, the skies. There are the oceans. And there is the underworld. So, we should draw a lot for each realm. If this insanity is truly how you would decide our fates, and that of the universe itself, well, we can hardly argue if it is in the lap of fate, can we? I swear to abide by the lots.
So it was decided, for Poseidon took the first lot, and he saw the mark of the oceans, and he would forevermore be lord of all of the seas. Hades drew next, and he was allotted the underworld. And Zeus drew his lot, though there was only one left, and he was given the skies and the stars and all beneath it, for he would be the king of Olympus, the lord of our generation. All in the one day, a king had been dethroned, and another was crowned. On Mount Olympus, the court of Zeus now met, for the Titanesses floated down from the skies, and as their sandals touched the earth, Prometheus walked before them. He knelt before Zeus and spoke on their account.
Zeus, king of Olympus, lord of the universe, I now reveal that which I promised to do when first we met. For it is Metis who hath been thy ally in all of this time. She, who has as much as any of your own people given you victory. It was she who told me of the wrongdoing of the Tyrant, how Chronos betrayed my father, his own general. It is she who instructed me to aid thee instead, and it was she who opened the door to swift Hades, who destroyed the weapons of thy foe.
And Zeus looked to Hades, who nodded the affirmative. Zeus was now ringed by his siblings, also by his mother, Rhea, dressed as a queen should be, and she also nodded to her son. Zeus came forward, took her hand, and said,
You have all done no harm to me or mine, and you, Metis, have done me great service. You and all of my aunts shall be honored on Olympus from now until the end of time.
Yet one more unpleasantness was to be performed, for Atlas still awaited his verdict. He stood proud, unbent, but in chains, and Zeus performed his first role as king.
Lo, son of Iapetus, general of the tyrant Chronos, Atlas, hearken to my judgment. 4 years did you resist the true king and his cause, and you slaughtered many for an unjust cause. Thus, you shall atone for thy misdeeds. You dislike change so much, you will go to the ends of the inward sea, and there you shall be placed to hold the skies in check. For the power of Uranus flows now, but may falter. So you shall take the entire weight upon your own back. You can carry it, the entire sky, for all eternity.
And so Atlas to this day kneels, bent double with all the weight of the sky on his shoulders. He may curse at Zeus and our kind, but he cannot move an inch, so what good are his words and thoughts of revenge? And that night was the brightest that had ever been, for the dark shadow of tyranny was banished from the night skies. Yet again, Zeus found himself outside, staring at what was now his domain, the heavens. And Rhea found him, but she was not alone. Zeus, we need to talk. He nodded, for it had only been last night that she had been freed from her captivity, and he had been preparing for battle, so indeed, they had not spoken. Zeus, the grandmother is also here. She speaks through me. More to say, we are in accord. Gently, Zeus nodded to her in respect.
I have done all that you have asked. All I was tasked to do.
Yes, you have dethroned a tyrant, and we are both so proud of you. But now, you have to build a new world, and that world must have strong foundations.
What do you wish me to do, Mother?
The world needs stability. You must marry. Zeus smiled.
Indeed, and I have just the candidate in mind.
His face fell as he looked at his mother's stern features. We both think you must marry Metis. Do not reject us before we finish. We owe you much, but so too do you owe the grandmother. Zeus looked on open-faced, but his brows were furrowing. Metis has done much for you, and is respected in the Titanesses, It would salve any wound that might develop. The Titans were their sons and husbands. We must appease them, or face another war. You would win it, Zeus, but we might all lose it. The mother cannot sustain another war, not between we beings of power.
But I am king. Should I not marry whoever makes me happy? Surely, that is the one blessing amongst all the curses of rule.
That sounded so much like your father, the Tyrant. You promised you would be better than he. Zeus was quiet for a moment, turning away from Rhea, contemplating the accusation she had laid at his feet. He took a deep breath and turned back to her.
And so I shall be. Go on. I am now listening more intently than I have ever done before.
You must marry Metis. Your children would be mighty, and it would unify your court. You must, Zeus. You know this now. To finally end the war. Zeus clenched his fists and looked as if he were about to summon his bolts. But then, his fists unclenched, and he looked to the skies once more.
It shall be as you say. Make it so. But do not make me part of the planning. I will attend, no more, no less.
You must promise to be a good husband as well as a good king.
Now, mother, you overstep yourself. I will wed Metis, but I will never love her.
Marriage is all that is required, but show her honor, my son.
I will try.
And so, Zeus took his place as ruler of the stars and skies, king of the Olympians, with Metis at his side. I watched the wedding I had wished for. I felt my heart shatter in my chest. But we toasted to peace and to prosperity. Little did we know that it wouldn't last the year. For the hearkening of a new rule does not come without challenges. And there was one more Titan we had yet to face, one that was not yet even born. The new king will be forced to defend his throne and life from the most unexpected of foes. For Gaia, the very grandmother who raised him, was displeased with her golden child. But that, like my own marriage to Zeus, is a tale for another time.
Living Mythology is our attempt to bring the stories of our ancestors back to life.
They explained their universe through the medium of their religions.
Their gods were not distant beings of academic study. They were living, breathing entities
that reflected the wants, needs, good and evil in the very heart of humanity.
We only wish to encourage others to study the deep and rich cultures of our forebears.
We hope you have enjoyed our labours. If so, then do consider liking and subscribing.
If you wish to support improvement in our endeavour, then we do have a Patreon as well.
Until next time, be good to all, but most especially yourself.